Hi, my name is Becca, and this is my YouTube channel, Sweetheart Knits. I'm so happy that you're joining me today. This is my YouTube channel where I like to talk about knitting, crocheting, sometimes sewing, whatever I fancy at the moment. And today I want to talk about the ways that I am going to be destashing my yarn going into 2023. I know that for a lot of people, the new year offers a really unique time to reflect on the choices that you've made over the last year or the last couple of years. I know that for a lot of people in the knitting community right now, there are a lot of people trying to destash yarn this year. There's a lot of people trying to work through whips, there's a lot of people trying to work through stash, there's a lot of people doing no-buy years, and I am one of those people. My goal for 2023 is to use 2,023 grams of yarn from my stash. I'm really excited about embarking on this in 2023. I have a lot of yarn in stash that I'm really excited to work with, and I'm really excited to gain some space back. So I thought that with so many people destashing this year and getting rid of whips and getting rid of yarn and trying to decrease the amount of space that we're taking up, going through the steps that I'm taking to decrease my stash could be really helpful. So I'm going to go through the 5 steps that I'm taking to destash this year, and hopefully you find something in there that's really helpful for you. The first step that I'm taking to destashing my yarn is finding my why. For me, the reason that I want to destash this year is mainly to save money, but also to get rid of some space and feel a little bit less like I'm taking over my bedroom with yarn. And for you, this why might look really different. Maybe you are overwhelmed with the amount of choice that you have when you're picking yarn. Maybe you also want to reduce space. Maybe you're really trying to change the way that you consume yarn. Maybe you impulse buy when you're stressed and you're trying to break that habit. All of these are really good reasons to destash in 2023. But I think it's really helpful to put a name to what you're trying to do. Like, just saying I want to use more yarn from stash isn't a measurable goal, and giving yourself a measurable goal will help you achieve what you're trying to do. So naming the reasons why and naming exactly how you're going to stash down will really help you stay consistent with it throughout the entire year instead of just casting on one project from stash in January. For me, this looks like using yarn from stash this year by trying to get rid of 2,023 grams from stash. I want to use 2023 grams for the year 2023, all from stash. And I like that goal because it's specific, it is measurable, and it is achievable. And those are really important things to consider when setting a goal like this. Being vague will make it harder for you to stick with your goal. Now that you've found your why, it's time for step 2. What do you have? I really recommend going through your stash slowly and taking everything out. Whether you have 5 skeins in stash or 500 skeins in stash, finding everything, putting it all in one place, feeling it, looking at it, noticing it, figuring out what you like and what you don't is going to be really important for you moving forward trying to get rid of stash. This could be a really difficult process for you if you struggle with a lot of guilt around your stash. If you really feel like you have too much, this might make you really uncomfortable. But I encourage you to go through it and sort it and enjoy it. Like, be thankful that you have all of this string that you can create stuff from. And the things that don't bring you joy, it is time to let go of. I really recommend keeping a log of all of this yarn in a notebook, in your phone, on your notes app, in Ravelry's stash feature. Getting everything sorted in a way that is easy for you to look at and easy for you to see what you have to work with will be really important for actually working through this yarn. Now that you know what you're working with and you have it recorded, it's time for step 3. Step 3 is where things start getting fun. Step 3 is, what do you want to do with it? Now that you have all of your yarn sorted and you know what you're working with, it's time to analyze all of it. Now is the time to look at your yarn and decide if you like the color, if you like the fiber, if you think you'll enjoy working with it. If your yarn is going to be scratchy, or it's a fiber that you're now allergic to, or it's a color that you will never wear, Maybe it's time to put that in a gift net pile, and maybe it's time to put that yarn in a donate pile. Any yarn that gives you pause is not worth working with in the future. If your yarn isn't bringing you joy, if you look at it and you just dread having to work with it, maybe it's time to give that to a friend you know will appreciate it. Maybe it's time to donate that yarn. Maybe it's time to throw it up on eBay and sell it for $10. Whatever you decide to do with it, just know that you don't have to keep it in your house forever. And this can be a big part of your destashing process and your stashing down. Getting rid of yarn in any form is getting rid of yarn, and it's something that you should celebrate. Now, on the other hand, yarn that you are really excited to work with, you should keep. Even if a color isn't right for you or a fiber isn't right for you, if you look at a yarn and think about somebody who would really appreciate it, like I personally have a couple of skeins in stash that are my sister's favorite color. And while I would never wear that color and it doesn't excite me, I'm keeping it because I know that I'm going to make a really good gift for her out of it. Going through this sorting process will make actually using this yarn a lot easier because you will be less overwhelmed with the choices that you have. And the less overwhelmed you are, the more likely you are to achieve your goal without being super stressed out about it, because nobody wants to be overanalyzing their yarn while they're just trying to sit down and have a good knitting session. It is now time for step 4, planning, the most fun part, in my opinion. In my opinion, the most fun part. So now that you have your yarn sorted, you know what you want to work with, and you know how you want to work with it, it's time to actually see what you can make with it. I personally like to use Ravelry's advanced search feature, where you can plug in the yardage that you have, the weight of your yarn, the fiber content, and see a bunch of projects that would work with it. This will help you narrow down your pattern selection. If you're not somebody who wants to use a pattern for a specific yarn, I really recommend gauge swatching. It will give you a good idea of what the yarn would work well as. Like if you're swatching a Surrey alpaca and it's super fuzzy and undefined, maybe it's not the best yarn for that cabled sweater that you were thinking about. It will also really help you to stick with your goal if you start planning these things out in advance. It will help you decrease your impulse buying because you have something specific you want to cast on if you can make a list that you have to work through first. This will really help you stay consistent throughout the entire year. This is also a really great time for you to build your skills by getting good at yarn substitution. I know for a lot of people, yarn substitution can be really intimidating, but I promise you that it's not that hard. I'm actually going to do a video on it in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. But this is a really good time for you to look into how to substitute yarns, what yarns are good substitutes for other yarns, things like woolen spun, things like worsted spun, things like fiber content and drape and ply, and all of these things that will make up the fabric that you want to make. This is a really good time to start learning about all of those different aspects of yarn, so that way you can substitute the yarn that you have in your stash for the yarn that a pattern calls for. And then we have step 5, which is execution. Now that you have everything planned, all you have to do is stick to it for the year, which is a lot easier said than done. I know for me, it can be really easy to see a brand new pattern pop up on Ravelry with a yarn that I would really like to work with someday and just buy it and cast it on. So this is definitely going to be the most difficult part for me, is staying within my plan. But giving myself these boundaries in planning and specific goals and things like that will allow me to work from stash and meet those goals without limiting my creative freedom. I still plan on buying yarn this year. I'm definitely not doing a no-buy year because I know that's not realistic for me or my creativity. I don't want to limit the work that I do designing and the work that I do grading and all of that to just yarn I have in stash. But I also would really like to get to that goal. So this way I can kind of balance everything out. So that way I'm not just using yarn from stash and I'm not just adding yarn to stash. I will definitely be taking more out than I will be putting more in, and I think that it will be a really good balance for me in 2023. I'm really excited to see my space grow and my liberties as far as creativity goes. will be a little bit more limited than they have been in the past, but I think that the trade-off will be worth it for me. So are you trying to stash down this year? Are you endeavoring on a no-buy year? Are you endeavoring on a low-buy year? Tell me all about your plans and what you want to do with your stash yarn down below in the comments. I would love to chat with you about it. If you have questions about the way that I'm doing things, I would love to answer them for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a lovely evening, afternoon, or morning. Thank you for spending time with me and spending time on this channel. Having my first video right now it's at like 2,400 views or something like that, which is mind-blowing. I really appreciate the support that you guys have given me starting this channel. I did not realize that so many people would be interested in what I had to say. So I hope this video was informative. I hope it was helpful. I hope it encouraged you a little bit to look at your stash and really critically try to plan it out. That's the way that I like to do things. Hopefully it was helpful for you. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope to see you next week, and I will talk to you later. You can find me on any social media platform as Sweetheart Knits, and I have my Ravelry, my Instagram, and my Etsy shop all linked down below in the description box. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Bye!